What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I'm your public speaking and presentation coach, Philip Sessions, and I've got Jen Fizer here. She bought she bought an established business called Brick House Coffee Bar and Eatery, and has turned the coffee shop into a thriving and innovative hub for downtown Harrisville, Missouri. She is also the finance and operations manager for a New York City, NYC, if I could get the acronym right there, financial firm that provides outsourced financial services to nonprofits. She has significant experience in helping small businesses grow and accomplish great things. And today we're going to talk about how she has used her speaking abilities to not only lead her business and lead her team, but also starting to lead within her community. But before we get into that, Jen, tell us a little bit more about yourself on a personal perspective.
Sure. You read my bio there. So I own a coffee shop. That's always the first thing that I say about people about myself, because people always find that so fascinating. It's kind of one of those like dream careers that people always want to have. We want to retire and own a coffee shop. So honestly, aside from working, I don't have much of a personal life, as you might have figured out. I work 40 hours Monday through Friday, and then I work at Brick House other than that. So personally, I've got some hobbies. I like to read, ride horses, watch baseball, but working is where it's at for me.
Yeah, well, hey, horses. I don't think I've had too many people on here that have ridden horses. I rode horses a long time ago when I was a child. We had like 17 horses on 5 acres, which is ridiculous.
Oh,
but we had a ton of horses. It wasn't just ours. It was a couple of friends in there that would put their horses on our land and everything. And so I definitely missed that a little bit, but I found sports when I was younger and got rid of all the horses and have not looked back since then. They're definitely something to keep up with. But that's really cool. So I want to kind of just dive right into the fact that you have a brick and mortar. So this is something that we see, especially with this new digital age, that, stay away from brick and mortar, be digital on everything. So tell us a little bit, because that is a unique thing and I know you're starting to go digital. I got some of your coffee, which was excellent, by the way. So definitely go check that out on your website there. But the coffee is amazing. But it would be way better in person. So, but tell us about that dynamic there of trying to navigate this online world while still living in a brick and mortar world as well.
Sure. So brick and mortar, it is in a lot of ways the most expensive route that you can go, because like digitally you can turn off subscriptions. You can, if money's not coming in, there are things that you can do to cut back on your expenses really quickly. And a brick and mortar, obviously you have rent, you have utilities, you have payroll that all have to kind of keep going regardless of what your sales are. So it's a tougher route, but it also gives you, at least me personally, so much more opportunity to connect with the community, to kind of create this atmosphere of this is where people want to be. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create this like community hub. And so far it's working, or it seems to be. People love Brick House. We have a really cool old building. It was built in 1880. It's brick, as you might have guessed from the name Brick House.
Yeah.
It's a 2-story building. We have a basement also. So it's just got that really cool old feel to it that you can't find in a lot of brick and mortars. So we're lucky in that. And then we're also on the town square, which for many, many years, the Harrisonville Square was completely dead. There was one guy that owned basically all of the property on the square, and him and the city didn't get along so well. And so the building sat empty for many years. And when he died, then they all went up for sale, and it's kind of slowly started coming back to life. And it's really fun to be part of that. We have lots of businesses that are going in now, and like, it's just like so much fun to be on the square and be part of that like thriving community now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so Harrisville, that's near St. Louis, right? Where exactly is
Actually,
that?
Kansas City. We are now other side of the state, so
Oh, wow.
we're
So totally far away. I don't know where I got St. Louis from then. Maybe just because
well.
I've seen some stuff where we've talked about events being in St.
Mhm.
Louis and just connecting that with Missouri. So,
Yep. So we are about 30 miles south of Kansas City. We actually are another unique thing about Harrisonville is that we're at the kind of three highways are intersecting through our town. So we have a lot of traffic that goes through town. We also, it's the town or the county seat. So we have a lot of people coming into work. We have, I think I heard a figure one time that we have like 30,000 people that come into Harrisonville, and the population is about 10,000. So it's a relatively small town, but
yeah.
30,000 people come there to work. So the population grows during the day, which is good for us. That's when we're open. So
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool too to see that. And I'm sure that dynamic of the people moving in and out throughout the day and everything
mhm.
is a huge thing. Having the three interstates to come right through there and everything. That's a lot of different traffic that definitely would
Yeah.
help out. But you mentioned about like the brick and old school ish, if you will, and everything, and the old building. It makes me think a lot about here in Greenville, South Carolina. So there was a lot of mills here because of the river that runs through the Reedy River, to be more specific there. And so we've got a lot of brick as well. And it's been really cool what Greenville's done here because I grew up in the Houston, Texas area. So everything's like brand new, everything's super flat,
Um,
everything. There's some brick like houses, but most of the infrastructure downtown are big skyscrapers. And so it's the third or fourth largest city in the country. I think it's fourth. So you have all of the city life there. And then I
mhm.
come here where it's a small town, very similar to that. I think I want to say we're about 30,000 or so. So we're maybe about triple the size. And we have people coming in all the time. But just seeing that brick and how people are trying to keep it a little bit older looking instead of just trying to make everything modern is a really
Mhm.
cool thing that I find very unique, as well as out where I'm at in Gray Court, which is about 45 minutes south of Greenville. Our town next to us, Lawrence, is also developing their city square as well, which is really cool to see. So I totally
Yeah.
understand where you are
I
coming
love those
at.
old towns coming to life, coming back to life.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really cool to see all these small old towns come back to life, and really a coffee shop is one to me one of those pivotal things. And
Mhm.
so why did you decide on a coffee shop of all things that you could have went into business for?
Okay, so this is kind of a funny story because I was a CFO for a farm, and our seed dealer, he was actually the original owner and creator of Brick House. Him and his wife had bought Brick House and the building, renovated it, and opened the coffee shop. And anyway, we were in there buying seed, and he said, "Do you know anybody that wants to buy a coffee shop?" They had sold to another family about a year prior, and that family just were having some changes, and so they wanted to sell. And I was like, I want to buy a coffee shop. No idea why. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't know what went into a latte. And it's a coffee shop and restaurant. I'd been a server like in high school and college, but I had no desire to really be in the coffee or restaurant business. But I really enjoyed business. And I know numbers, and I have like a really interesting background, which during the time that I was going through it, I'm like, I don't know where this career is leading me because I kept jumping from like thing to thing. Turns out it was leading me to entrepreneurship. So I was learning all of the different skills that I needed. But so basically, he said, "Do you want to buy a coffee shop?" It was actually right around this time 4 years ago. It was Labor Day, the day after Labor Day, that I found out that it was for sale. My mom and I talked. She was my partner. We went in and we made an offer on September 19th, and then we took over on October 1st. So within less than a month, we became coffee shop owners, and the rest is history. I had to learn a lot on the fly, but a lot of it is basics. A lot of it are, running a business. I had quite a bit of experience with small business at that time. So it fed into it. But it's like when people say, oh, you must have like loved coffee. And I'm like, I don't care. I can't even tell you the difference really between a lot of different things, but I can make it for you. I rely on my baristas to be the coffee experts.
Yeah, that's hilarious. It just really goes into the fact that when I did get that coffee from you, I'm like, oh, this is a pour over. I guess it'll work for my little reusable Keurig cup or K-cup thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that's how I do it too. I'm like, you should be a coffee snob. You have a coffee shop. So it's really funny that you got into this business where you're just like, I don't know. It sounds like fun. Let's do it. I've never drank a cup of coffee in my life, but hey, let's do it. So it's funny how sometimes entrepreneurship starts that way, which is completely different than what a lot of people say. Hey, do something that you love, do something that you're passionate about. Clearly, you weren't passionate about this. You probably didn't love it either, but you maybe liked the idea. So
I actually don't subscribe to that method of doing something you love, because I think in a lot of cases you end up in businesses where you don't know how to run them. Like you might love to knit or do whatever. And yes, that hobby might be something that you love doing, but the actual mechanics behind running a business are not fun for everyone. So I think my perspective is completely different, because I look at things through a different lens than somebody that maybe only really likes to cook or only really likes coffee. So, I've been able to do things with more data-driven choices than if I was doing it for the love of coffee. But I do drink coffee every day, so I have changed that up a little bit.
Well, good. I'm glad you're finally drinking that coffee, drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak there.
Exactly.
And
there you go.
yeah, and that makes me think of like my first business, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get into personal training. That's something that I love to do. And I found where I started not even wanting to work out for myself, but I really didn't want to help people out. And there were some other things with that too. I think I wasn't quite ready for business ownership either, but I definitely found myself not wanting to work out and not loving fitness like I used to. And that's where I ended up switching over to public speaking. And I definitely love that a lot more. And I'm finding out more and more about the business every day and loving that more and more. But let's move into the coffee shop now. So we kind of been talking about how you got started, how you acquired the coffee shop and everything. But let's kind of get into where you're now having people that work for you. And we were just talking offline about how you're in this transition now from where you're working with high schoolers that were helping run the place to now you're having some young adults or college age people, and that difference there. But tell us about that, the difference in the dynamic, but how in the world did you communicate with people that much younger than you? Because I think I'm like, oh, I'm not that much older than some of these people in college. And then I realized, wow, I am a lot older. And it's such a different aspect being 10 or 20 years removed from
I had
high
a
school
bit
and
of
college life.
Somebody kind of knocked some sense into me one time, because I didn't think that. I was like, oh, I'm not that much older than these kids. And one of my employees was like, somebody asked if you're my mom. And I'm like, babe, what? And then I was doing the math. I'm like, okay, technically I could be your mom. But I was like, sister, man. They're asking if I'm your sister. But yeah, so it's been, luckily, I've almost always had kids that come and work for me, and they'll stay for a long time. So I kind of build these relationships with them over years. I have a really great management team. I have 2 managers with me currently, Tammy and Roxy, that honestly, Monday through Friday, they run the business for me. And they do a lot of the things that allow me to work full time, not in the business. So I'm so grateful for them. But in a lot of ways, I've kind of removed myself from having to be the one to communicate directly with them. But I get to be kind of the fun person that kind of comes in and just chats with people. I'm not the one that's like laying down the law in general. They're listening to my managers that way. However, there also becomes that like distance. So as I was telling Philip on the beforehand, we just every summer we would kind of lose a bunch of students to school. They would either go away to college, go back to school in one way or another. And so I always had a transition period in August. And this year we kind of lucked into having a couple of slightly older, like mid 20s, staff members that applied, and they have been phenomenal. And there is a huge communication and maturity difference between like 15, 16, 17 year olds and 24, 25, 26 year olds, which very obvious. I mean, but it's so much easier to relate to them just because they have a little bit more life experience. However, when we did have the younger kids, I really enjoyed being able to like be their first job, teach them kind of life skills. That's the way I always looked at it. Like we were providing them with life skills that they can literally use in their kitchen at home. Teaching them to cook and all of those things. So I have always looked at it like I'm just teaching the younger generation rather than like trying to connect with them on a like a friendly level. So,
That's a good dynamic, and I'm glad you brought that up right there at the end, because oftentimes we think, oh, we've got to, connect with people, and there at a certain extent when you are speaking, you do need to connect with people, but especially when they're that much younger, a lot of them. And I feel like maybe it's just because of social media and seeing more of these people and the groups we're a part of with these a lot younger people. Typically, they're in their early 20s at the youngest, but still they seem to be just hungry to learn. And so you just teaching is really almost the way that you're connecting with them, but it's not like
mhm,
you're trying to be their friend and understand who they are as a person necessarily. You're just being that mentor for them and everything, which is such a huge
exactly.
thing that I think is overlooked a lot of times, especially
Mhm,
from older people. I know when I had my first job in engineering, I was always just a young, dumb engineer. I didn't know anything that I was doing. And of course I didn't, but that's how I got treated. And therefore I didn't really learn from the more experienced engineers because just sit over there. Just let us deal with it.
mhm.
We'll figure it out. And then I would just sit there and then not learn. And my first job was terrible. 3 months went by and I would go to work and they'd be like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have anything for you today. And then maybe an hour in, they'd find something for me, or they wouldn't, and then I would just go home. And it was crazy.
How
And I was
boring.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It was super boring. And then finally, after 3 months, they're like, "Yeah, we're just gonna have to let you go. We don't have any work for you." I'm like, "That would have been nice if you just wouldn't have hired me, and I could have went somewhere else." But it worked out in the end, and because of that, I got into another job actually that I made a connection while I was there. So it's interesting, but it's really cool that you are doing that. You're teaching versus just trying to connect and be their friend and everything. But
Mhm,
you mentioned something else about being distant, being the CEO. And I think about business owners that are beyond working in the business and they're starting to work on that business, but they do have
mhm,
to come into the business sometimes. And I even think about corporate where you have like a senior management that's just way outside of the day to day business. And they're making these decisions that impact the people that are the worker bees that are doing the day to day. So how do you make sure as you make decisions or bring decisions down to management when they're not perceived as something that's fun or it's a major change? How do you go about communicating that and letting the management know how to communicate that if you do that for everybody else on the team?
mhm. So we actually had a little bit of conflict, maybe is a good way to phrase it. A few months ago, we had some staff members that they had been there for quite a while, and the longer that somebody's been there, the more they want to contribute, the more they want to kind of take ownership of things, which is fine. I very much encourage that. But there was also this kind of disconnect happening between me running the business and making decisions for the business that were in the best interest of everyone, and what they were kind of getting together and deciding what they thought was best for the business. And we were kind of getting, it was causing a big disconnect, honestly. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I had removed myself from the Monday through Friday operations for sure. I've always been around on the weekends, like Saturdays and Sundays. I would be in, and so like the staff members that would work on Saturdays were used to seeing me. I still had a really good connection with them, but there was kind of this one group that was just, and they didn't mean any harm by it, but they did not think that they would give a suggestion to, say, a manager, and the manager would come to me with a suggestion, and then I would say no because of this. Well, they did not think that I was listening to them. So there was some kind of, just, you could tell there was tension building. And I feel like what's ended up happening is that just in general, they were kind of aging out of our system, if you will. They were going off to college or moving. So, I fixed a lot of the things. We did an employee survey, and this is where we got a lot of feedback on they were not gentle in their feedback. And I had to balance myself, because on the one hand, I was like somewhat irritated with some of the feedback, because I'm like, do you not know what I'm doing for you? But they didn't know what I was doing for them, because I wasn't around, and they weren't seeing some of those behind the scene things that were happening that were ensuring that they, had certain things at work, or, I was trying to take care of them the best that I could. But they were seeing things that, like, we have a drink fridge that constantly, we need to replace it, but it also just holds canned drinks. So it's like, it doesn't make me a lot of money. So that was one of their complaints, was that the drink fridge is always out of order, and amongst other things. But it's like, they don't understand necessarily that you have to have the funds in order to pay for whatever. And at the same time that the drink fridge went out, our oven went out, and our oven costs thousands of dollars, and it's much more important to replace that. So all of that to say is that there was just a real disconnect between me and the employees. And so my decision then was like, I need to take responsibility for this. They feel this way because they don't think that their suggestions, they don't think that their voice is being heard. So I immediately fixed some of the things that needed to be fixed that had kind of just been like on the back burner. And they weren't all necessarily things that I was in control of, but they thought that I was in control of. So I made the calls that I needed to do in order to get those fixed. And then, I just sent out a message and said, listen, you can't see everything that's happening in this business. And I laid out, like, these are our sales for the week. This is what payroll cost me. This is what rent is, so that they could kind of start to understand. Like, they see all the money coming in, but they don't necessarily see where it's going. So they think that it's like all this money coming in, and I must just be pocketing it, because what else? But, it's that was the downside to me stepping out. So that is why I've tried to reconnect with this new group in a better way, so that we kind of get off on that good start, so that they know that I have their best interest in mind, and that they know that they can come to me with any questions or concerns or things that they would like to change, without feeling like they need to internalize it and then they kind of form a little group posse of hatred.
Yeah, man, that is definitely tough, and that's how I felt sometimes with leadership, and I try to think about their perspective and everything, and that's one thing that I wish that they would do. It's not about showing all the numbers and showing, hey, here's what we're bringing in, but here's what's going out, but just talking about these things and even asking for those suggestions. And I get it. They're the ones looking at the big picture. They're seeing 5 years ahead. And so they're able to course correct as we go. But it would be nice to be felt heard and look at these suggestions and at least told, hey, the reason why we're not moving forward with this is because of this. And even if that was like senior management telling middle management, then telling us or something like that, it doesn't have to come from the mouth of senior management, but it'd be nice that it did go up the ladder and then come back down or
Mhm.
something like that. What are some other suggestions for? Is I'm sure there's a lot of business owners right now or leaders that are that in this situation. What are some other things that you would suggest for them to help them move through a situation like this, or even prevent it altogether if they can?
Yeah. So the other suggestion that I have is if you have an employee, and so if there's not something that you personally like that, the example I gave you with the employee survey and all of that, like I took responsibility for that because there were the employees that I had were good employees and I wanted them to stick around. But there have been other cases where one, we might hire somebody new and they might, for a week or two seem like a great employee. And then all of a sudden, especially because we're dealing with younger ages, they'll start gossiping or they will start kind of complaining about one thing or another. And negativity spreads so fast. And so I like to just nip it. Like if we have an employee, I don't care how good they are at their job necessarily, but if they are toxic to the rest of the staff and are creating an environment where the rest of the staff is starting to turn, I want them gone. And it does, like I said, it doesn't matter necessarily how great they are at their job if nobody wants to be working with them, or if they're creating an atmosphere where we're a very customer service based business and customers can tell when they come in. If everybody's negative, they can tell and it starts to reflect. So we do not accept that. So that's honestly my number one tip, probably more than anything, is make sure that you have the staff that you want, and you can train the right attitude, but the wrong attitude will never change.
Yeah, and attitude is one of those things that you really can't. You can train it to a certain extent, but if they're just always negative, i- at the best, you'll get them to be neutral. You're never going to
Yeah.
get them to be super cheerful, super positive, or anything like that. And oftentimes, in me being in a technical space, a lot of times that's what you try and hire for is a technical person. And while to a certain extent you need a technical person to be an engineer or be a maintenance person or things like that, at the same time, you can't teach those soft skills, those personable traits, but you can teach those hard skills, the working with your hands, working with your mind, learning the computer systems. Those are things that you can teach, but people skills is one that you just kind of learn over time, and you can spend a lot of time and hopefully do it, or yeah, just get rid
Yeah.
of them or not even hire them altogether.
Right.
So I
So
want, yeah, I want to transition here a little bit. So I know we brought this up here at the beginning. So you have the events that you're doing as well, which I think is really cool. So tell us what was going through your mind when you first decided you're going to start doing some local, like a monthly lunch and learn and
mhm.
everything. So what was going through your mind to start this?
So it was actually one of those ideas that when I was considering buying the coffee shop, that was one of those things that I was like, yes, I want to do lunch and learns. I want to do, like, I wanted to have all of these different things, book clubs, different things for the community. And so I bought it in October 2019. 2020 was not a good year for in-person events. And
Yeah.
so it kind of got put on the back burner until this year. And I think it's kind of one of those things where I was finally ready for it. I think if I had tried it at an earlier date, I would not have had the connections that I have now. I wouldn't have had the kind of that confidence to start it that I needed to, even in the community. I started, so in October of 2021, I joined one board. And then a few months later, I joined another board. And so that was where I kind of started community, that like one's an organization that focuses on the square and businesses on the square. And then the other one was our chamber. And I joined the tourism committee. And so between those two, I started making connections with other people in the community that I had not known before. I am not from Harrisonville. I moved there. I'm a transplant. I moved there when I was 24, 25 or something. So, I don't know the people in the town. And even though I bought a coffee shop, again, it was kind of, I always worked full time for the most part while I owned it. So I didn't necessarily know a lot of our customers either. And so I needed that kind of that time to start to build some sense of community with the people that are in the town, and kind of learn who knows what, who could I use for lunch and learns, those kinds of things. And so I started those in April. We've had a phenomenal turnout. Like it's been such a fun experience. So I've had, so it's April, May, June, July. I think we've had 5. And the amount of business owners that I've been able to connect with has been really a really fun experience. And in a lot of ways, I've started to kind of create a leadership role for myself as the one that's bringing all of this to Harrisonville, because I bring people outside of the community to speak. So it's been a lot of fun, but like I said, I needed the confidence in order to be able to do it, and the resources. We also started like a book club, which that I've done off and on over the years, but I'm the one that's leading the book club. So it's another speaking opportunity for me. And we are doing, we have girls' nights out on third Thursdays. And so that's another kind of like group of business owners that are coming together to put on an event. So all of those things have really just started to take off in the last year, and a lot of speaking opportunities within those. So and communication probably more than anything.
Nice. Well, I love all that. It's such a great thing. And so how has that impacted your business? Because obviously you're doing these engagements, you're doing the game nights, you're doing these lunch and learn, just bringing different people in that really has nothing to do with coffee. But how has that really impacted your business?
It's been very good for business. I think in a lot of ways, people automatically look to coffee shops to be that kind of hub for things that are going on. So it's sort of a natural progression to be hosting these things, with not only on top of all the things that I personally am doing. We have, I don't know how many Bible studies that meet there. We have a knitting group. We have people that meet there for business meetings all the time. People kind of set up shop, and insurance salesmen, and they come in, all of their people come in and meet them there. So it's just that space that everybody wants to be in, and you can feel like I don't care if you sit there all day, we've got plenty of space. So everybody feels welcome, and that's what I've wanted. I just wanted that to be kind of the spot where everybody goes for breakfast, lunch, and coffee.
Nice. That's great. And I know I use coffee shops all the time. I try and not use the woke places. We definitely got a lot of local coffee shops, so I try to use that as much as possible when I do networking events or when I just do one-on-ones with everybody. It's a really easy spot to go, and it's usually relatively cheap. I mean, $5 versus 10 to 15 if you're gonna go grab lunch with somebody. That's obviously another perfect way to do it. But you kind of feel a little more rushed to eat, and then you're not able to talk as much as when you're just taking a sip of coffee and you start talking some more and everything. So coffee places are definitely the place to go. But on a personal perspective, how has you getting more comfortable with speaking and doing these presentations and these little, if you will, workshops, lunch and learns, all of that, how has all of that helped you on a personal basis? I mean, business as well, but you mentioned that a little bit. So what about on a personal side?
So there's a couple of facets to this. So my husband passed away in November of 2020, and his family and his friends and we decided to create a scholarship for him. And so we give away literally thousands of dollars every year to a high school senior that wants to go into a trade. And the way that it's helped is because I'm constantly speaking to people, but also public speaking at the event. We do a barbecue every year, a competition barbecue, which is a lot of fun. If you're in the Kansas City area, come. It's in March or April every year. And so I'm up there, I'm presenting the winners. And there's usually 100 or so people up there. Most people are terrified of speaking in front of groups, as you probably are aware of.
Yeah.
So, when you amplify that with a microphone and hundreds of people, nobody wants to go up on stage. So there's me and one of the friends that we're both very comfortable with public speaking. So we generally are the talking heads for the event. But we, even just going over the rules when we're meeting with the teams, that's a group of probably 50 different people that I'm talking to. So in that way, I've become so comfortable just speaking in front of groups that it's like I can do it on the fly. It's also helps because I've been on the news. I've been interviewed multiple times by the Kansas City news channels. Today, we had our Congressman, Mark Alford, that came to the coffee shop for a meet and greet. So it makes you comfortable in any situation, no matter who you have to talk to. And so you kind of just customer service in general, owning a coffee shop, you have to talk to a lot of different people, but being comfortable doing it in front of large groups, even like, for instance, tomorrow we are having a team meeting. So there will be 20 different people there. I will be talking in front of that group. So there are so many instances where being comfortable with communicating whatever it is that you need to communicate comes in handy. So that for me, it's just personally, like I feel like I've made better connections with people. I can relate to people better, being able to communicate well with them, not being scared to go up and just talk to somebody. I'm also I'm a huge introvert. Like I would, if left to my own devices, would probably sit at home all the time. But I feel like I always joke that I have extrovert Jen and introvert Jen that are on my shoulders. And so extrovert Jen always plans my schedule, and then introvert Jen hates extrovert Jen. But that's what happens. But I feel like you need that in order to get out of your shell. And it just makes opportunities come your way that otherwise wouldn't.
Man, I love that. And I feel like that's just my story about why I started just speaking and getting in front of people in general, because I felt like I was always overlooked. And then because I started speaking more, people have started to admire the fact that I get up there and speak, that I don't look like I'm scared, that I look like I know what I'm doing, when there's a lot of times I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just going up there and I'm winging it and just trying to figure it out as I'm speaking. Not when I'm actually on a stage speaking, but kind of more like, oh, hey, we need you to go speak now. Okay, cool. Here's the mic. Let's just talk and figure it out. And because of that repetition, it's made it where it's a more natural, more comfortable thing. And like you mentioned, that you become this figurehead within your city, within the people around you, which is such a cool thing that you don't get if you don't get comfortable with speaking and communicating, even if it is just a one-on-one conversation. You got to start somewhere. It's such an important thing to learn.
Yeah. Well, and what happens is if you do it with one group, say that you're willing to go up and talk because X made you, then when you go to the next group, they're like, oh, Jen will talk. Jen's fine with talking in front of people. So it just kind of naturally creates all these opportunities that, like I said, that wouldn't normally come, because if you just kind of sit back and don't take that initiative to start talking to people like you will just kind of fade away, and people won't notice you. People won't they won't be looking to you to be the leader in the group, even if you don't want to be the leader. Just having some sort of input is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one last thing that we're going to our last question. You reminded me, I did a local coffee networking event, and one of the guys, we kind of did a little joint thing together. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to invite the mayor. Again, it's a small city. So the mayor ended up coming out. And because of him meeting, and we met and we talked a little bit, and he was like, oh, wow, I didn't know you were a speaking coach. We could really use somebody for some of our events. So I actually got to be the not narrator. I can't think of what they use, but basically I was the one that did like all the talking for the whole state of the city address, which was really cool. So I'm like going back and forth, like, here's this person, here's what they did. And they'd come up there and give them an award and just go back and forth. And it was a lot of reading, but because of my speaking and being in that opportunity and doing those things, I was able to meet the mayor. I was able to deliver at the state of the city address and everything, which was really cool. So if you aren't, for those of you in the audience who aren't getting out there and speaking, make sure that you start doing it, because you never know what opportunity is right around the corner. Jen, this has been awesome. And I want to get to our last question. And that is, if you could only share one message for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
So my answer to this is always that whatever your current situation is can change. So if you're happy with where you're at, but you want to be even further, you have the power to change that. And if you're not happy with where you are, you also have the power to change that. I look back on, especially my early years of my career, I was in jobs that I hated, that I felt like they were leading to nowhere. But I just slowly started taking these steps to, I took different college classes. I would just apply to jobs that it seemed like I had no opportunity to get. And I just started talking to people again. And slowly my life started to turn, my career in a way. But I also, through all of those steps and through all of those jobs that I thought I hated, they taught me so much that I need today, that, you may not know why you're going through things at the time, but you have the power to get out of your situation, and you never know what you might be taking from today's situation that will help you in the future.
Grab life by the horns. That's
Absolutely.
one thing I like to say. Yeah, just go and make it yours, especially being here in the States. We can go make anything happen within reason that we want to happen. It just takes a little bit of action. Jen,
Absolutely.
if people want to follow you, especially if there was I've been saying Harrisville, it's Harrisonville.
Harrisonville, yeah.
Harrisonville. Okay,
Nice and
so I've been,
long.
yeah, Harrisonville. So if anybody's in Harrisonville, definitely go check out Brick House Coffee there. But if they're not and they have to connect with you digitally, where is the best place for them to reach you at?
Okay, so as you mentioned, you can buy our coffee online, and that's brickhouse.coffee. And we are on Facebook and Instagram. Brick House Coffee Bar and Eatery is Facebook. It's nice. It's also a long name. Sorry about that. And then Instagram is at BH Coffee Bar. So you can find us on any of those. Me personally, I'm Jennifer Fizer on Facebook and at Jen Fizer on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, Jen, once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about the life of the CEO and business owner and how they go about communicating with their team, especially a young team like the team that you have.
Yes. Thank you for having me.